I started the Real Mental podcast because it bugs me when film and TV miss the mark about how mental health gets portrayed. Real Mental is a podcast where a film-loving psychiatrist, that's me, talks to directors, writers, actors, and critics to help people figure out their life by getting to the truth about mental health in the movies. Welcome, Daniel Persitz, to the Real Mental podcast.
Thank you. Real pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you. I really enjoyed your film, Key of Genius. And before we start talking about it, maybe you could introduce yourself to the listeners and share a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Sure. Yeah. So as you mentioned, Daniel Persitz, I'm a filmmaker, writer, director based in Los Angeles. I've had a career working in Hollywood, partially on the producer side, working for established production companies and studios and things like that. And then have transitioned to a more, full-time creative role, writing and directing. And Key of Genius is a project I've actually been working on for a long time. First off, as a feature-length film, it exists as a feature-length screenplay, which we're hopefully going to be in production in next year. And I had decided to make a short film version of it, which is both a standalone film that can be enjoyed start to finish without any other context, but it also serves as like a proof of concept for the larger feature. So that's what it is, yeah. And it's this incredible true story about a blind autistic boy meeting his lifelong piano teacher. And it's based on this real guy, Derek Paravicini, who lives in London, who's been featured in a lot of documentary programs like 60 Minutes, and there's a TED Talk about him. And the circumstances around how he was discovered from a very young age by his lifelong music teacher, Adam Ockleford, just fascinating story that I fell in love with. So that's kind of a little bit more about it.
What was it about the story that drew you?
So I come from a family of classical musicians. Everybody on my mom's side is a professional violinist, pianist, string bass player, you name it. And I've been playing the violin since I was 5. I still perform today with the Santa Monica Symphony here in LA. So always very drawn to, music stories and things like that. So it was actually my mom that sent me this YouTube clip about Derek that I think was pulled from his 60 Minutes episode. And it essentially talks about this guy that can play any piece of music he's ever heard in his life. He can instantly recall, like if he's heard it once, he can instantly recall it, play it in any key, in any style. And I'm watching this and I don't believe it's real. Is this AI? Is this a made up thing? Like what is it? And did a little more research, watched the full 60 Minutes episode about him, found out about, him and his teacher. And then Adam, his teacher, had actually written a book about their experiences together called In the Key of Genius. So I tracked down the book, read the book, devoured it, really fell in love with it. And for me, there were a couple of things that really stuck out that really drew my attention. So one of the core messages and ideas behind the book and behind Adam's experiences with Derek is, because of his autism, he was quite nonverbal as a child. He didn't speak much. Later, he would start to repeat what others would say in this way that's called, I think, echolalia. And it was really music that bridged the gap between them. Adam figured out that music was almost the way that Derek communicated. It was like that was how he communicated with others and wanted to share things with others. And so once he figured that out, it allowed them to really relate in this very meaningful way. That for me as a musician, I was like, wow, this is such a great idea. It's something I can relate to as a musician. So I think it connected all these parts of kind of my background and also was just, a lovely, fascinating story on its own.
Yeah, it really is a standalone film because it's so emotionally resonant. This story about this child, and you know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of that film, The Miracle Worker. The story of Helen Keller.
Love that movie. Yeah, there are a couple films that were foundational for me in terms of when I was doing the research for this, in terms of inspirations, and that was absolutely a key one.
There you go. So I caught that. Yeah, it's because this child, the poor mother who brings him into this school to see if he can be accepted to this school for the blind, she's struggling so hard because she can't reach him. She can't get through to him. And this teacher is playing and the little boy rushes into the room and is attracted to the music. And that's the beginning of the relationship. This child is drawn to the music. And that's the key to open the door. I was talking about In the Key of Genius. That's
right.
The key that opens up his door and enables him to connect to the outside world and to this teacher. And that to me was so profound.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. I think Miracle Worker is such a great reference. I think the other thing that to me was also so fascinating about this that changed a little bit about my perceptions and understanding of autism is I think there's been a lot of discussion over the years about savants and people that have these amazing gifts and they can do these amazing things. I think what that idea shortchanges in many cases is the amount of work that potentially, leads to that. Derek was certainly born with incredible gifts. Adam's thinking is that Derek was born prematurely, which likely was the thing that caused his autism. He was not born blind, but because he was born so prematurely at a time when premature babies did not survive most of the time, he was put on all of these different machines and oxygen devices that actually over oxygenated his eyes and caused him to be blind. And so there's this idea that perhaps his incredible memory comes from the autism part and the blindness is what gave him a great ear in this combination, So he certainly had a lot of things there, but I think it took the right teacher and that right combination of like teacher, student, and relationship to get him to a place where he, now can tour the world and perform with orchestras and perform in front of audiences and things like that. And that for me was like, that was such an important part of this too, is like people talk about him as a savant, but it's also, there's so much work that went into that. And it's for me, very meaningful to explore, the work that it took to get there.
And now, let's pause for a quick word about my other podcast. I'm Dr. Marcia Sirota. We all need to be inspired and uplifted these days. We need a good laugh and we need to be moved. In the Ruthless Compassion podcast, I speak with a wonderfully diverse group of people. They've overcome daunting obstacles and they're making unique, exciting contributions to our communities and to our world. The Ruthless Compassion podcast has created more than 175 episodes over the past several years. Why not have a listen to it today? Well, what the film really shows is it shows a lot of the character of the teacher, right? It shows his patience, his determination, his persistence, and also his compassion, because there's one point where the child hurts him quite badly and he doesn't get angry. He doesn't lash out, try to punish or reject. He just, takes a breath and carries on. He comes across as quite a remarkable individual, the teacher. And I would say that for a child who's struggling so much and, having such a difficult time with human interactions, that was what was required, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Adam is incredible. I've met him many times. I mean, he still is very close with Derek and travels with him and, comes to his performances and things like that. And yeah, he's a remarkable human being. I've seen him interact with other kids as well. And yeah, the amount of patience he has and compassion, I mean, you just feel it in every interaction he has.
And I think that's, to me, the real message of your film. You tell me, I mean, it's your film, but what I got as a viewer is that, when people are struggling with anything, right, and you have a mentor, a teacher, a therapist, the person who is giving the service has to come from a place of real love and patience and compassion, and also a certain, hope and perseverance that we can get through it with hard work. And, that tells me a lot, as a psychotherapist, as a psychiatrist, I have dealt with challenging people over the years. And the only way to get through to them and to help them is to have those qualities, to have that patience, that persistence, that compassion, that love. And they have to know that that's coming from me, right? They have to know that they're being received in this way and that I have faith in them and I believe that they can do it, because maybe other people didn't in the past. So that message was very strong. Maybe that's because of my job as a psychotherapist, but for me, I really got that message the most strongly, that if you're dealing with someone who is struggling or suffering, you have to bring these qualities to bear.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's certainly a large part of this. It celebrates great teacher, mentorship, student relationships, and, what is needed in some of these challenging cases. And in the feature version, we explore a lot of what you're talking about to a much greater degree because, there were a lot of great big struggles, both between Adam and Derek, but also with the family and all these different challenges and things like that. And yeah, it really took, like you said, patience, love, compassion, a lot of these qualities to get through it.
And the child now, he grew up and he's now 46 years old, right? I think something
Yeah.
like that. And
Yeah.
how is he doing? Like, what kind of a life does he have right now?
Yeah. So he has a remarkable life now. So he does require 24-hour a day care, to live and whatnot. But he is constantly performing. So he still lives in London and performs a lot in England, but he does tour the world. I've seen him perform several times in California. He has a gigantic online following of Facebook and Instagram followers, and he'll do these Facebook live sessions where people write in music requests and he just does them on the spot. And there will sometimes be cases where it'll be a song he's never heard before. And so then Adam will play the song for him on the spot. He'll hear it once and then just play it. So he does all these things. And now interactions with him, I mean, he's amazing. I mean, he, like he couldn't do an interview like this, for example, certainly not, but he can answer questions. He has a very pleasant disposition. You can ask him about his day and what he had for lunch and what activities he was doing, what he's performing at a concert coming up. So he's come a very long way in terms of his verbal communication. And I think one of the things that's so disarming about him that people don't expect is when you meet him, like there's such a warmth that just emanates from him in every interaction that he has, both music and not at this point, And I think a lot of that comes from his interactions with Adam. He also, and this is not touched in the short film, but it is in the feature film, Derek grew up in a very upper crust British family. His aunt is Queen Camilla. So that gives you just some idea of the kind of family he grew up in, which meant that he grew up in this very ornate, elaborate British estate where he was raised by a nanny, because that's what was done at the time and probably still to this day. And his relationship with the nanny was really interesting. I think because he had both the blindness and autism going on, but it was at a time when people weren't really talking about autism. It was the 80s. It wasn't where we are now. I actually think like the movie Rain Man almost like put autism on a much, much bigger map and got people talking about it. And now obviously people talk about it much more. But at the time, people in his family, like they had no idea what was going on. They thought, oh, he's got some learning difficulties because he's blind, but we'll send him to a school for the blind, that type of thing. They were not aware. And what his nanny did, which Adam really gives her a lot of credit for this, is she created a lot of structure in his life and taught him polite manners, taught him how to interact with people, certainly with a lot of struggles and many, many, many challenges. But she created the structure for him that ultimately helped him grow in a very meaningful way. And so many of his interactions now and behaviors and how he talks to people and how he sits down for a meal and things like that, like she laid the seeds for all those things. And now, yeah, he's really come a long way. It's truly remarkable.
So you're really reinforcing what we were just talking about, how, again, a person with kindness, compassion, patience, love, persistence, faith, belief in him, again, helped him by thinking about what he needed and how to best support him. And then without any particular training, I imagine, just,
Right.
Followed her instincts and really paid attention to this young person
Mm-hmm.
and gave him what he needed. So this young person was enormously fortunate, although, yes, he's wonderful and talented and gifted, but he had really two people who were so there, so supportive, so present. And man, like sometimes in my psychotherapy sessions in the past, my patients would say, geez, if only I had had one person there for me, if only
Right.
there had been one person who, had my back. And, and if they hadn't, we really we grieve that loss because it's a true loss. But Derek had two people who really were not just loving him like a parent or something, but really working with him and trying to bring out his best.
It's
And
true.
this is such an inspiring story in that regard because,
Mm-hmm.
He had enormous challenges. Yes, he had enormous gifts, but he had enormous challenges. And how far he has come is really a testament to not only his hard work, but the hard work of these two individuals, Adam and his wonderful nanny. And, this woman's probably an unsung hero, right?
Without a doubt.
How
Yeah.
wonderful for this young person to grow up with that kind of incredible support, and to allow him to become the person who he is today and to have a life, right? To not just be institutionalized, to not just be, sitting around doing nothing, but actually to fulfill his potential, to
Mm-hmm.
be the best version of himself, which is what we all want, right?
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I mean, like you were talking about with your patients, sometimes it just takes having the one right person, but that's a lot, not everybody gets that. And the ones that do, it's a very fortunate situation. And to your point, yeah, Derek having two like that was instrumental.
Yeah, well, in your movie, we don't see the nanny, but we do see Adam and the relationship. It's a short film. It's what, 14 minutes?
Yeah, 12 minutes. Yeah,
12
very
minutes. Yeah,
short.
it's a
Yes.
very short film, but you pack so much into that, and a lot of it is not even dialogue, it's just interaction. But you really conveyed that relationship so beautifully. Well, the beginnings, the inception, right? Because
Yeah.
what you're really showing in this film is just a very, very tiny moment at the beginning where the spark is raised and everything follows. But you really see that. And I think that's so wonderful. Well, it's been really wonderful talking with you today about this film. I hope to see in the future the full-length version. I think that will be really fun, but I really enjoyed the 12-minute version of Key of Genius, and the story really is inspirational, and I think you brought that inspirational tone to it and that tenderness to it. And that's what a filmmaker wants, right? You want to have that emotional resonance. And I thought that these days when we're talking so much about autism spectrum disorder and there's so much conversation in the air, it's nice to have a story with a good ending, with the most positive ending. So, and this is the beginning. Your story is the beginning, but it's a lovely and inspirational story, and I appreciate you coming on the Real Mental podcast to talk about it today. This is Dr. Marcia Sirota. Thanks for listening to the Real Mental podcast. Please leave a review and your comments wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to sign up for my free newsletter at marciasirotamd.com. And while you're at it, why not check out my Ruthless Compassion podcast with over 180 episodes and counting. If you have any ideas for guests for either Real Mental or Ruthless Compassion podcasts, please email us at info@marciasirotamd.com. Happy listening.